The first thing we can do better inside of here. Oh, you know what? This grid analyzer needs to be exported. We actually don't need this module. I don't even know if we're going to need this module, to be fair. I don't think it gives us anything, but I'll leave it here for now. We may need it down the road if we need to import a library or something. So we also want to export we want to export our interface from here before I forget. And then up here within our domain module, we are going to want, I think we want a new folder. No, it doesn't make sense to add within a domain module. It doesn't make sense to add, for example, a models folder and an interfaces. They can all just exist right here. So we'll add a new TypeScript file. Absolutely, yeah. By swapping this out for something that we can easily manipulate and change, you're absolutely right. We'll get a lot more functionality in the grid, but the other benefit is that we've completely decoupled, and so we can make changes in other places. And we can analyze each of these cells and use that analysis to determine, these cells need to be marked as errors. One of the things that would be interesting, just thinking about down the road, if we want to get crazy with this, a tutorial analyzer or something like that, and have it pop open tooltips saying, hey, you could put this value here because of this rule and this rule. And then they could click on a link in that rule, and that rule could highlight cells that shows them how they fit together, or draw some animation or something like that. By decoupling this, we can give ourselves all of this power and potentially play around with what we want to do in the grid. Let's call this one cell state, maybe, because the cell state would have the current value. It could have a valid value that would set the error flag on the cell. It could have, yeah, I think cell state is the right way to go. I do think the visitor pattern might be a good call here, and we can definitely investigate that. So cell state will have, currently it will have two properties: value, which will be a number, and it will have valid, which will be a Boolean. And we'll also give ourselves just a tool to create a cell state. And this will just be a function that will take in, it will take in, we'll parse out value and valid. No, we won't parse out valid from here. Will we? Oh, you know what? I just thought of one other state we want. And we'll want puzzle cell. And we can probably component store. I love NGRX component store. The other thing I've been experimenting with quite a bit is using ELF as the store and injecting it at the component store. I do think, and this is something that we need to think about, I guess, when we get to the U1 state, is how do we determine a U1 state? The other thing that I think that these grid analyzers can do is they can be used kind of so in AI there's a methodology called GAN where you've got a generative adversarial network where you have one thing that's trying to fool the adversary and the adversary is trying to learn from that. Um, but the analyzers can work kind of as a way for the generative. If we ever decide to generate puzzles, the analyzers can kind of work as that adversarial. So as it's generating puzzles, we can analyze that puzzle, and if that puzzle is ever invalid, we can tell the generator, "Hey, you've generated an invalid puzzle," and then the generator can walk back through it. Just thinking kind of forward a little bit of what we can use these for. Um, and so I I think these analyzers are going. I don't necessarily think we'll put the U1 inside of the analyzers because I think we'll use them for more than just analyzing the puzzle and if they've won. I think we could use potentially tutorial analyzers that will teach new rules. There are other types of things that can happen, and maybe people can turn them on depending on how much processing power they want to use. Like potentially, say they want to get better at spotting things in solving Sudoku. There are things like X wings and different types of patterns that you can teach yourself to look for. And what if we created an X-wing analyzer that they could turn on at the same time as their puzzle state analyzer? So I think these analyzers will potentially wind up being more than just determining if the puzzle's valid and if they've won. We'll have to think about it when we get to that point, right? But at this point, this notion of a puzzle cell, and maybe we need a better name for that, but the notion of a puzzle cell is a cell value that's provided to the user in the beginning of the game. Cells, this will be a partial cell state. Can I do that? No, I can't. What I can do is say that it can be a cell state, and that if we don't provide it, then our default value, and right now, I just realized, so our default value will be undefined for value, and I can't do it that way. It has to be value undefined. Valid, we'll start with valid being true. And the main reason that I want valid to be true is in the beginning, I don't want the whole grid to be red with all these errors, and then the analyzer analyzes it, and we turn the entire grid to having no errors. I think that would be a bad thing. I would prefer that the grid shows up, and then the user goes through and they may be interacting with it. The other thing that I'm thinking about is making these grid analyzers run on a web worker. And the reason that I want to run them on a web worker is I think that there's a potential for these analyzers to be potentially processor heavy, and I don't want them to mess with the user interaction. So, and we'll default this to false. This will return a cell state. And we will return. Oh, you know what? I'm not parsing out valid from here. So one thing I'm trying to think through, and it will affect, because we need valid and we need puzzle cell. For now, we'll just leave it as is. What I was trying to think through is, would I ever want them to pass a valid false? But I'm thinking too far ahead. If there's ever a time where we'd be tempted to abuse something, then we can discuss doing that. But for now, this gives us the ability to do create cell value 1, right? And it's create cell state. So we do need this to be a partial. I should have trusted my instincts in the beginning. But, you know, now we've got a function that we can feed into various map or reduce calls and compose a cell grid. Oh, yeah, see that changes. Read-only flag at some point. That's what the puzzle cell, and maybe read-only is a better name for that. We can do that. Let's just call it read-only. So my decomposition is not working if I make this partial. This is probably my problem. Now, what am I missing here? I should be able to define this as a partial. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. And you guys are probably already catching on. This should be a partial here. But I can make this. I can set the defaults in the decomposition. Can you make them optional on line 8? I could do that. I wanted to do the I wanted to set the values in the decomposition. It's one of the things that I've been talking about with people. Sometimes it's hard to talk about what you're doing and think through what you're doing at the same time. And so I make fun mistakes and then I confuse myself and then I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is the right way to do it." So it works the way I expect it to. I can do just a pure create cell state. I don't like this call. Oh, so I missed I missed two important things. I don't need to make that call if I do that. Because I do want the ability to just create a generic cell state like this. So things look good. First, let's export cell state from here. Rather than running tests here, what I should be doing is adding a new test. I'm just looking to see if they have one, but we're going to do a cell state .spec.ts. These are the first tests that we've written in this project, which is a little bit embarrassing, but really we've just been working on the view. So we've added cell state to the domain library. We've got our cell state and we've got our spec file, but one thing I really enjoy is the ng-neat spectator. We're going to add ng-neat spectator. And make sure you add the ng-neat. I so many times just try to add Spectator. Let's not run that command. I forgot. This is the cool thing about NX that I really love just about the way nrwl builds their tools. I'm using an old way of doing things with NX, and they're like, actually, the better way is to do it this way. So we're going to do it that way. I love the fact that they teach you their tool. It's an amazing thing about NX and just their philosophy as a company, just to make the tool more user friendly. But anyways, we're adding Spectator, and it doesn't have an ng add package, so it's just there. And the other tool, and we'll just do we'll do nx, or no, it's just npm install, right? And then, okay. That's the command I need to drill into my brain. The npx nx generate, and then the ng add target. So we're gonna, let's check that out. Let's just make sure. Yeah, it put it in my actual dependencies. I don't want ng-neat there. So we're going to add it to our dev dependencies. And that's one of the things I really like about Get Kraken is if I don't like what's happened in a file, I can just edit the file right here inside of Get Kraken, and it includes some pretty nice simple editor features. So we've added that. That is a really interesting idea. I really like that. We could have a test component that is a grid where we're actually testing an analyzer. So we would be writing tests for the analyzer, and one of the tests would be to have a grid hosting invalid examples and then having the analyzer modify the value of the grid. And interesting. That's a really interesting idea. I like that because then we could see if error states were set properly based on the analyzer and just different things like that. I really like that idea. That is a great idea. And that's why I like building this game on stream. Backseat coding, I don't know how I feel about it yet. I haven't had any really serious backseat coding. I love all of the ideas that you guys come up with. There have been some amazing ideas tonight, and even on Thursday's stream. This started out as a way for me to just explore some things that I wanted to explore to learn for work, but it's really grown into something a lot bigger. And it's satisfying to me to know that there are people out there who find this satisfying too. It makes me feel good about just what we're doing here on stream and the time that we're spending together. It makes me feel like this time is valuable and, not just something that we're doing just for whatever. I don't know how to explain that better. We've added 2 libraries, and these are 2 of my favorite testing libraries. So the reason we're adding Spectator is kind of a wrapper around the test bed. It makes some settings by default to the test bed that speed up the test bed, and it does some other things that make your tests run faster, allowing you to use kind of a test bed like environment to do your testing, which I really like. The other piece, ng mocks, is just a really nice and quick way to mock dependencies that you use in your test instead of having to create mocks yourselves. And that's why I use those 2 libraries almost all the